Hey y'all, welcome to Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. I'm Mandy. I'm just a mom sitting down having real conversations with real Texas parents about what's going on in our schools. Today, I'm joined by a homeschooling mom of 4, Michele Nuckolls from Montgomery County. Michele, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, in the parent empowerment movement, we're always talking about the 4 pillars: transparency into what our kids are learning and why they're learning it, high quality education for every child, respect for parents as the ultimate decision maker, and the choice of how our kids are educated. And one of the important things that comes up all the time is transparency. Can you talk to us a little bit about your journey as a homeschool mom and wanting to share great books with your kids and other kids, specifically the brave books that you wanted to see in your libraries?
Sure. So a friend of mine and I hosted a Brave Book Story Hour at our just local county library.
Can you tell what brave books are real quick?
Oh, yes. So Brave Books are, they're picture books that have various authors who are conservative influencers like Jack Posobiec and Bethany Hamilton. And they follow a larger story. So I think they're on the 4th saga right now. And they teach traditional American values, the values that our country was founded on. And they're exciting. Like a lot of Christian books can be kind of they don't have the pizzazz that sometimes our kids are looking for.
The superheroes and the
yes,
things. Right.
And these books have all of it, right?
Right.
They have the villain, they have the superheroes who save the day.
Yeah.
And they are, while the storyline isn't necessarily Christian, like it doesn't necessarily talk specifically about God. Mm-hmm. In the parent section of the book, they do have games that you can play with your kids and discussion questions and Bible verses to kind of help guide as much as you want as a parent to be guided in the conversation. And the books are great, well illustrated, very popular. And so we hosted the story hour. 200 people showed up, which would we just thought, well, a couple friends will come. You know what I mean? Like it'll just be a little story hour. It'll be fun. And it was big. And several people came up to us afterwards and said, we really love these books, but their brand new books are not cheap.
Right.
Like, no matter what.
Sure.
Right. And we can't afford to buy brand new books, but could we get them in the libraries?
Yeah.
And we thought, well, why not? And so one of the things that we did, I started the Substack, 2 Moms and Some Books, and I asked people to request the books. I put the link on there. This is how you request books
in your public libraries.
In our public libraries, the county libraries.
Yeah.
And I said, let's all request these 2 books. And the response was, these books will never go in the library.
The response from the library?
From the librarian who answered I guess it goes like an email, and they send you an email back.
Okay.
These books will never be in the library. They're not reviewed by the right literary journals.
Oh.
And, so what are those literary journals?
Uh-huh.
And they were a list of pretty liberal literary journals, and they have to be I believe it's the librarians focused on books that get 2 to 3 positive reviews.
Okay.
And the books, so I look at the reviews, and it's very liberal, right? And not very positive for conservative books. Usually slamming conservative books. Very.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, this isn't going to work. But what I noticed was Rush Limbaugh had written a set of children's books. Mm-hmm. And those books did not get positive reviews, right?
Of course not.
But they were in the library. So how did that, a few of the libraries libraries had them.
Okay.
They were probably donated, maybe not. But I wondered, how did that happen? Because we were told, even if they're donated, we won't put them in unless they qualify. And so
qualify on what? Did they tell you?
They have to be positively reviewed by those literary journals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And so I decided to figure out, why were these books there?
Okay.
And so I read the library policy, and realized that the librarians were following the part, or some of the librarians. I don't want to speak
Sure.
broadly, but some librarians who were maybe more
Progressive, left-leaning.
yeah, and were more in charge
Okay.
of what goes in,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Were following the parts of the policy they liked. So because some of the policy said that all viewpoints, even if they're controversial, have to be included
Mm-hmm.
in the collection, and if there's a significant public interest, the book has to be purchased as well. So
You had 200 moms saying we're
yeah, there
significantly
were 200
interested.
people showed up,
Right.
Like
Okay.
that was one thing.
Okay. Right. All right.
And anyway, it was a lot of work. Ended up doing a petition, and so we got them in. But we got the Brave books in because I asked like, is this the final word?
Mhm.
And I was told, well, okay, I'll let the Brave books in if they're donated.
Can you remember a couple of the titles?
The Island of Free Ice Cream is by Jack Posobiec.
Okay.
That's The Dangers of Communism.
Mm-hmm.
Elephants Are Not Birds by Ashley St. Clair. That one is about, I guess, like
Gender
it's
ideology.
basically yes,
Correct.
but without
And-
actually saying it, right?
Right.
And let me think.
Tuttle Twins
And so the Tuttle Twins are a different
series,
publisher.
but similar.
And that took months to get in, much longer, over 6 months. And but part of it, I did push for them to be purchased by the library.
Good.
Because I thought, well, first of all, Tuttle Twins offers amazing pricing for libraries.
Okay.
So why not?
Yeah.
Even if they're paperback, why not? For
Mhm.
$4 a book, $3 a book.
Right.
And depending on how many you order, you get an amazing price.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't. It was
They
just,
wouldn't
I
do
kept
it.
getting pushback. Even the commissioners in their proclamation said that the Tuttle Twins, they wanted the Tuttle Twins to be included, and pushback. And
Just because they weren't reviewed? Was that their? I mean, were they hiding behind that part of the policy?
I don't have an official answer.
Okay.
But I do think that there was
Yeah.
one or two people who just
Yeah.
did not want
Sure.
to buy them, right? And I was told,
But-
like, well, can they be do you have a donor for them?
Uh-huh.
Well, why can't the county buy them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was the other book, God Made Boys and Girls,
Mm-hmm.
Helping Children Understand the Gift of Gender. I found, I think it was over 60 titles in the children's section written for ages 12 and under, that were gender books.
Okay. You found in Montgomery County.
Probably the reddest county
I was
in
going to
Texas.
say, there were over 60 books specifically for children 12 and under
Yes.
to discuss the different aspects of this gender ideology culture war,
Right.
trying to convince children
Yes.
that they can turn
can
into a
transition.
boy or
Yes.
turn into a girl.
Some of
Forget
them were picture books.
chromosomes.
Some of them were picture books.
Mm-hmm.
But the most concerning ones to me were the chapter books.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of these books have nothing on the inside cover that indicate that this content is inside.
Right.
And we're not talking about, yes, it was gender ideology that said things like, basically, without saying it directly, your problems will be solved, right? Your problems will be solved
Right.
if you transition. You'll be happier. If you struggle with depression, it's probably because you're a boy and you're not
horrifying,
really a girl, right?
This stuff, yes.
Okay,
it's
it goes
awful.
even further though.
Okay.
In the book Lily and Duncan that I found, when I first found it was in the children's section. That one, I didn't even have to challenge it because the librarians moved it quietly on their own. And that one, Tim, who wants to transition to Lily, he's at his best friend Dare's house, who's a girl, a sleepover, and they like to dress up. And
Okay.
he's obviously dressing as a girl,
Okay.
and she's dressing as a girl. And she brings in the boas and all the things
Mm-hmm.
with that from her mom's closet,
Oh, yeah.
and they play, and her mom walks in
Okay.
and sees what they're doing and pauses for a minute and then comes in and joins them. And while she's putting makeup on. I ask her to put makeup on my face like she's doing for Dares. And she does. And then she says, now don't tell your mother I did this, okay? I knew that I could probably tell Mom, but I didn't tell either, just in case. So there is
It's just disgusting. This pernicious,
yes.
intentional war.
Yes, against the parents.
To separate parents from their children.
Yes.
And that bond.
Yes.
That is necessary to have a healthy future.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. This is where you can find stories on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. No.
And no. This is what the book says.
Oh,
you can
God.
find stories on YouTube, and don't forget to erase your search history so your parents don't find out. That was in several of the books. Because I picked them up and I read them. I read them from cover to cover. And what was interesting is this kind of thing is very common. It's like, these people cannot help themselves. Like they have to put this content in the book.
Well, and we saw, if you watch the Democrat National Convention that just took place a few months ago, they put a teacher up on the stage that said, I went into teaching because I saw it as the greatest tool for social justice activism. There is unfortunately a cohort of those in our education system that do realize they have access to hundreds of minds to be able to sever the parent-child relationship and lead them down a path of misery, falsehoods, failure.
Yeah.
It's really sad. Confusion, fear,
depression.
All of it.
And what's interesting is I went through that list and I looked for it in Conroe ISD, our school district, and I found 40 titles. 40
of the 60 titles were in Conroe ISD.
Some were titles that aren't even in our library.
Oh, they had others. I wish I was surprised. I did a podcast recently with Hillary Hickland out of the Central Texas area, and she's been on this mission as well, along with thousands of other mothers that realize this is in our schools.
Right. I mean, elementary schools.
Right.
Some of these are in elementary schools.
Kindergartners have access to this stuff.
Right.
It's crazy. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for going down that path and fighting that fight. And for the parents listening, if you're unfamiliar with Brave Books or the Tuttle Twins series or Heroes of Liberty or the PragerU Kids series, and there's so many ways that you can make sure and educate your children on our values that made America great. And we must do that until we can course correct a system, not just the K through 12 system, but the institutions like our public libraries and things like that, from intentionally putting this stuff in front of our children's faces without our knowledge, or putting things in front of their faces that encourage them not to share with us. We have got to be able to share and educate others on how we can access really high quality educational materials. Which brings me to another topic and kind of how we met. But you are the author of an incredible blog or Substack post that you wanted to bring attention for other, particularly homeschool moms, on the really great attributes of House Bill 1605 and kind of the battle that was looming in the State Board of Education as we were attempting to provide free access to public school teachers, to anybody. That was the whole thing. Access to really high quality education that kind of follows the classical model of education, which is chronological for history and those sorts of subjects. And throughout history, it's been the way for Western civilization, the countries in Western civilization, to educate their populations to ensure that a democratic or republic is supported with a well-educated populace. So I want to talk a little bit about what the impetus was for you personally when you decided to write this great article that we will provide to all of our listeners so that they can read it as well and break down kind of what is classical education, what is an open education resource, and some myths and facts. So what started your desire to write this?
Well, I attended I guess it's an educational forum or something. I don't know what you call it. A meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So I attended a meeting that was with a group of people who were not for this bill.
Okay.
So I started there. There was a lot of drama and upset, right, on social media.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And then I attended another lunch and learn that was for the bill. And so I attended both and kind of gleaned saw some red flags and on some of the concerns. And
can you be specific? Can you talk about maybe some of the red flags when you went to this?
One of the red flags that I heard was, the Department of Education and the Texas Education Agency should just be abolished. And we shouldn't have these anyway. So why should we support this when they shouldn't exist? These two agencies shouldn't even exist.
Yeah. And
so the Department of Education, actually, that could happen.
Right, let's do that.
I could actually see that happening.
Yes.
Especially if Donald Trump is elected, President Trump, I could see that happening. But the TEA being abolished, no matter how you feel about it, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
That's just
these are the same people that want to abolish public education, right? That it shouldn't be. It's the same people that say, none of this, there should not be public education.
There shouldn't be, everyone should. I heard that as well
from
other people.
We say the quiet parts out loud.
Yes, exactly. I know.
Say it.
And that was one of the other, that's never going to happen.
Right.
That we are not going to abolish public education.
Right.
And even if we wanted that to happen,
we can.
Which I'm not saying.
Right, I know.
That I want that but let's just go there for a second.
Yeah.
It will not happen.
Correct.
It's
in our Constitution, in the Texas Constitution.
And thank you. I didn't even know that.
It is.
That's great. But it's just, it's like asking for the moon.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
And so instead of, I can see how a libertarian would be like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's fight for that. But we have to,
But is it? I mean, I'm going to go down this path with you.
Yeah.
I know you're not.
Yeah,
and I hear that too. And I'm like, do you understand that, particularly when we look at minority communities and low-income communities, the number of families that are single-parent households, do you understand that that many mothers work, fathers work, we're really in right now, particularly with very leftist policies that have forced a lot of families to either make crazy sacrifices. Right. For a single parent, you have to work.
Right.
You need your child.
Not everyone can homeschool.
That's right. And God bless those who do.
Yeah.
It's an amazing calling. You were called to do this, but we don't want to eliminate public education.
We can't do that.
We want it to be excellent.
It would be not good for society.
Correct. That's it, is to say, it's on the, and then do you know what happens when 75% of the population.
Why did we do this in the first place? Because kids were running in the streets of New York and they had nothing to do.
And the only way we actually protect the republic for futures is to ensure that they are well educated on what made us the greatest country that's ever existed in the face of the earth. And that requires significant educational resources and time. So that was it. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure, because sometimes I'm like, because I get this even when we're talking about not just trying to reform the public education system, but when we're talking about providing education savings accounts and school choice people, and they'll say, no one should be doing this anyways. And I'm like, well, constitutionally, yes, we should. Yeah, and do you understand what happens when you have generation after generation of generation that has no education?
Right.
There will be no America.
It would be very bad for us.
It would be very bad for our culture and our society. And the entire makeup is dependent on a well-educated populace.
That's right. So it would be disastrous.
Correct.
But then at the same time, when we want to do something good, we need to think about whether it's even possible.
Right.
And then we need to look at what is possible, and we need to work towards that.
Yes.
And House Bill 1605 and this curriculum is possible.
Correct.
It's something that is within our grasp. We can have it.
And optional. And optional.
And optional.
No
That's
one-
right.
It's
They don't
optional.
have to do it.
Yes.
That's right.
It's optional. Freedom.
Yes.
Let it ring.
They have the freedom. And one of the things I love about it is that the teachers, I didn't even realize this until I started looking into this, how much, because most curriculums that I use are open and go. Like,
Yes.
I just open it up.
Right.
I have a script that I can follow if I want to,
Yes.
which I never do. But,
Right.
like, I could if
Sure.
I didn't feel confident. And I just teach the lesson, right? And that's not what Texas teachers do.
Right.
They buy a curriculum well, they don't, right? The district does.
Yes. Can we talk about this real quick? How
Yeah,
this
yeah.
works? I tell parents, a lot of people don't realize this, that we're all about local control. And so the districts select the curriculum, whether it comes with supportive materials or not for teachers, right?
Yep.
And it's kind of done like drug reps. That Johnny over here, who's the curriculum seller, has a relationship with trustees or superintendents, or the district's always used said curriculum. And just like a drug rep comes and visits the doctor's office and buys lunches or whatever, that's very much how curriculum is selected, which is why there's so much disparity and confusion.
Yep. It's
For
the same way with
families.
libraries.
It's the same
Yeah.
thing, right? You get
Yep,
and you go
that's
get
right.
it, and it doesn't matter if it's good. Hence the
Yeah.
reason why.
And they
We've
are.
been using phonics. in
Yeah,
40%
right.
of
There's
our
no
classrooms.
font. Yes, it's because of the scheme is brilliant. How
Right.
they
Lock them in.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And it's unbelievable.
So
But I was going to say, just on that point, a friend of mine did a PIR request, and we got emails from all of the companies that sell the books to the
Sure.
librarians.
Yeah.
And that was my first thought when I saw them, is I thought, this is the same as a relationship between a drug rep
It is.
and a physician or whatever.
Yes.
Doctor's office.
That's what it's the same
It's
thing.
the same thing.
And that's exactly right. And by the way, they try to form those relationships with our state board of education members too. It's really important. I mean, they try and do it at the Capitol. They try and do it everywhere. It's not just at the district level. It's also at so it's really important for people to understand how these mechanics work and how it's confusing. It's not just confusing for parents, but teachers. If you pick up and move to a different district or whatever, there's no guarantee that you're going to be teaching. You could have been teaching phonics in one district and now be told you have to do whole language and 3 queuing, and you're going,
Right.
what? So
Which
it
is probably the more common method, is the whole language in 3 queuing.
It has
At
been
least
until
in our area.
Okay, say that again.
In our area,
Yes.
in the Houston area,
Yes.
that is the more common method.
It is. And the problem is there's 50 years worth of data that tells us that phonics is the far superior method to learn to read. So for parents, when I get asked this all the time, what would you ask a school before you send your child? And the top thing that I would ask would be, do you teach phonics? Because and there has been such a resistance among those reps, similar to the drug reps, right? There's been such a resistance to actually shift to what is better for kids so they can learn,
Right.
that we literally had to pass a law in 2019. It was House Bill 3 that mandated the teaching of phonics, because so many districts in Texas, we have over 1,200 public school districts, were still teaching whole language and 3 queuing.
And the problem is that while they passed that, the district still held on to 3 queuing.
That's correct. And that is,
Yeah.
we still estimate that today it's between 30 and 40% of our districts, which
Wow.
is quite fascinating, because when you know that 50% of our kids can't read.
Right. And that might be the point.
That is the point, right? It's
And
can
that's
we can just
from
fix
my
this.
experience, what my oldest went to public school for a couple of years. And I didn't realize what 3 queuing was. I didn't understand exactly what the situation was happening. And what I realized when I finally learned about it and the pitfalls of it and why it's so bad for kids, and she could not take apart a word. She could not do it. And so what I realized is, if a kid never get because I find she got phonics intervention and she is reading like college level books now, right?
Yes.
But what I realized is if a kid never gets that intervention, they're probably going to read at a second or third grade level for the rest of their lives. I mean, is that the case?
Say
is that
it for
happening?
That is the case. So that is exactly correct. If you can't do it, so for families that don't that are listening, 3 cueing whole language is you're effectively being taught how to memorize words, sight words.
Right.
But also the 3 cueing method is to look at context of what it is, to look at images if you can, and to try and put together these 3 different types of reasoning.
Right.
Y'all, for every single word, it's insane.
Right.
It's a totally...
And you get to big books and it's just done.
And you
You're
can't
done.
read
You
them.
cannot
You
read
cannot
them.
read them. You do not understand the phonetic makeup of them. And it is setting kids up to fail. And hence the reason why 50% can't read. But then it's actually more. So if I'm talking about the state level, the STAR exams and things like that. When we look at the NAEP scores, the National Assessment scores, where that we compare, we call it the nation's report card, where we compare across the states. 24% of 8th graders can read on grade level.
Wow.
That means over 75%. So it's interesting as someone that you just kind of, you got it. 75% of our 8th graders cannot read on the grade level of their peers across the country. And it's a massive problem of the way that system is set up. I know
It's if you notice, so what I noticed looking through the young adult section, which is not my focus, a lot of the propaganda that is put out to teach, like, I don't know, that our open borders are great,
right?
And only good people come across the borders. And one of the books I came across actually taught, like, this was the premise of the book. I wish I could remember what it was called, but it was a young boy who came across a teenager who came across the border, and the Border Patrol was portrayed as
bad,
as like racist, horrible people, right? And it was a graphic novel. So that's what I noticed is a lot of the propaganda being put in the libraries now, and that's what I call it as propaganda. It's in graphic novel form, because that's what these kids can read.
That is correct. You hit the nail on the head. Yes, that's exactly right. And we're seeing it with not just, it's with all the progressive ideologies, because they're doing it with the transgender issue. They're doing it with the hypersexualization. When you look at, there's this book called Sunflowers, and Tilt, and all these others. They're in the graphic novel form, and the imagery is straight up pornography. And that is linked directly back to the 3 cueing of look at the images, look at the pictures, use the context, if you will. So, okay.
Yeah.
Woo, what a mess we got going on here. Let's get back to 1605. And so it passed with overwhelming support out of the legislature. It was signed into law a year ago, and now it goes through the SBOE process, where it's the red flags that you saw at a meeting have actually kind of been amplified, if you will, in the sense that it's more and more conspiratorial, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about, I use the word amplify because there was a curriculum provider called Amplify that has had some really progressive content in their curriculum that they have provided to the state of Texas. So for people that understand, there's about 6 really big national providers of curriculum. And a lot, what they're doing is they're trying to sell, obviously, to appeal across the country. Now, they have a special interest in Texas because we're about 11% of the population. But as they're writing the curriculum, they're going along with, they have their basics that they have to meet that usually follow along roughly with the TEKS. And then you have like 25-year-olds that just came out of our very progressive colleges that are trying to write and put the images into the textbooks. So it is very fair to say that in the past, and currently with a lot of these providers, that they have included very, very progressive content and imagery in their curriculum. But the point of the curriculum, the 1605 that is optional, was to really be able to ensure that whatever is put forth fits within a quality and suitability rubric that does not allow the very leftist, Marxist, progressive ideology into the curriculum.
And the frightening things, right? That kids are not prepared for.
Correct.
They're not
age
their brains are
appropriate.
not age
Correct.
appropriate. That's right.
Correct. So then let me ask you, let's do a true or false on 1605 that helped you after going to meetings. I think it's awesome that you went to kind of hear both sides. You, in your article, did a fact or myth, and I think it is beautifully done. Again, we'll link it for everybody because it answers really a lot of the questions, particularly the more conspiratorial aspects. So, fact or fiction? The curriculum is written by the company Amplify.
No, that's fiction.
Okay. So
now some of it is they're open resources, right? So
Yes.
they're free educational resources. They're going to be the same. And most curriculums use open education. I believe, that's my understanding, is that most curriculums use some open education resources in their curriculum.
Yes.
Like short stories.
Right.
We use open education resources.
Right.
And I print out short stories for my kids all the time to read. And they're
What is an open education resource?
an open education resource is a free. So a writer might write it, and they make it available for free. And it's usually on the internet or wherever. And anyone who, like, if I were writing a curriculum, I could take their content and put it in my curriculum, and I am free to do that.
Okay.
That's an open education resource.
Okay.
So to create a curriculum that is completely brand new content is extremely expensive.
Yes.
Right? That's the most expensive part of a curriculum is what I was explained to me.
Right.
Yeah. And is the creating, right? Writing. It takes a lot of time.
Yes.
And so this way you can piece together your curriculum and you can take content that you don't have to pay for.
Right.
And
Some
put it-
content.
Some content.
It's not all of it.
It's not all of it.
Right.
And what's interesting is what I was told with this curriculum is that, like, if I were to want to do my own homeschool curriculum, let's say I wanted to do a free curriculum for homeschoolers because some homeschoolers can't buy curriculum.
Right.
Or I wanted to do whatever. I could take this content that the state of Texas is providing that's excellent, right, with phonics.
Yes.
And I could put it in my curriculum. I could reorganize it so that, like, the parent letter doesn't need to be in there, right? Like different things that, that make sense. So it makes sense for homeschoolers.
Yes.
And I could publish it.
Yes.
And and
then other people can get it.
And other people can get it.
Right.
Right. And they can print it.
Right.
I could print it and make that part of my business. I'm going to print this curriculum for other parents to have who are homeschoolers, and they could, buy it from me. I could do that if I wanted.
Right.
Like this, there's so many things that could be really good for not just the public school community, but for the homeschool community, because it's OER, but it's not traditional OER. It's OER as defined by the Texas Education Agency, so that it cannot be changed. Like, it's not going to be, nobody's going in there.
It's not like Wikipedia where
It's
people
not like
can go
Wikipedia.
in.
That's right. It has to be changed by the State Board of Education in an open meeting.
Right. Okay. That's great. And let's just to put a fine pin in open education resource. That is a genericization of free educational materials, right? And some people have this fear that because UNESCO, the United Nations, puts out open education resources, that this is some sort of UNESCO written content. Is that true?
No.
Okay. Correct. It's not. Thank you.
I don't know where that, like, it's just like we're
so
pulling
UNESCO puts out they have open education resources, and they have used that term for a long time. But when I say the term is
just because they're using the
generic,
term,
right,
does not mean that they are.
It's kind of like
involved in
saying
this.
if you sneeze,
Yeah.
someone says, "God bless you. Would you like a Kleenex?"
Right.
You know what that means, right? Everybody knows what a Kleenex means.
Right.
But a
right.
Kleenex is just, it's a brand.
Right.
You've got Scotties, you've got
Right.
Puffs, you've
Right.
got all the, like, but Kleenex is the a generically accepted term
Right.
for face tissues.
Right.
And so that's what OER is. It's a
Right.
generic accepted term for free educational materials.
Right.
So an example of that would be in English literature, Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail.
That's an open education resource.
Right. It's out. It's free. Anybody can pull
Anybody can use it in their curriculum.
Great.
That doesn't mean that it's UNESCO.
Right. That's right. I don't think Martin Luther King Jr. was being influenced by UNESCO. That's exactly correct. Thank you for kind of talking through what an open education resource is. It's very important because I do understand there are some individuals that I think they mean well. I think they are genuinely concerned, as we all are, about the trajectory of our country. And it's important to recognize that while there are nefarious entities and actors out there that are doing their very best to steer our country in a direction that you and I, and really they don't want our country to go, but that 1605 is an attempt to fight back with freedom. Because it's opt-in. It's free to use.
It's free to use.
Right.
And this is why we elected the leaders. We worked so hard this past election to elect the leaders that we have.
Yeah.
Is so that they could do good things like this.
Right.
So I hope that we will let them.
Right. Well, that's it. So to try and punch everybody in the face that's trying to course correct problems is not always super helpful. Okay. That's great. Thank you. And a little bit more just about Amplify. Let's go back to that one because that is a big concern.
So my understanding is that there's no woke content in there.
Correct. Because it has to go through the suitability rubric.
That's right. And nobody has been able to show me any woke content. And that's what's really important to note.
Yes.
Is that I haven't been able to find any and nobody else has been able to.
No one's been able to put it
Nobody who is upset at me about supporting this has been able to show me woke content.
Let's just go into that just for entertainment purposes.
Okay.
So you're a homeschool mom of 4. I'm going to take, based on your comments that you've made so far, that you're pretty conservative. Mm-hmm. Your family's conservative. You've chosen to homeschool to keep your children away from a lot of the secular progressive ideologies that unfortunately are in too many of our public schools talking about. You said 40.
And I mean, honestly, we discussed progressive ideologies, but that's what's great is that we're in an environment in our home where we can guide our kids and talk about all of the different ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that's important because when you published this, and it was sent to me, and then I sent it to everybody and their brother because I thought it was just one of the best explanations of 1605. I mean, really, it could not have been done better. Can you talk a little bit after? So you went to meetings to hear the pros and cons, and you did your research. You are an educator for your kids. You are a conservative, and you put this together to say, this is really good. This is really great and something that will truly help Texans, homeschoolers and public school, because we do have public school districts that are using this and they love it.
That's great.
So what are you experiencing by those that you didn't agree with their assessment of UNESCO takeover?
One of the arguments that I've gotten is that one of the great things that I like about this is that parents can log in and see exactly where their kids are, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not UNESCO. Like,
right.
I'm not gonna like that. And that's great because what do? When our kids come home from school, we ask, "How was school? What did you learn?" Nothing. Mm-hmm. It was fine. Right? Like, that's all we get. Mm-hmm. Well, with this curriculum, there's two ways that we can keep up with our kids. Mm-hmm. The teachers have a form letter that's already prepared for them. Yep. That they can print out and send home with a kid. Yes. So you're already getting a paper in the backpack, right? Then there's a second way to keep up, and that's with the login. So you log in and you can see where your child is exactly, where your child's classroom is.
Mm-hmm.
So then if your child is studying something that's particularly difficult, because there are difficult times in history. And
like what?
Like the Holocaust, for
Mhm.
instance. And let's say your kid is having a hard week. All right, before this, your kid could have a hard week, and you have no idea why.
Maybe
And
they're sad.
Maybe they're sad.
Maybe
that
they don't
week.
talk as
maybe
much.
They're
Maybe they're sassy.
Yes.
Little extra.
Yes.
Little extra attitude.
Yes, exactly.
Right. But you may not know why.
Yeah, you don't know why. And
Right.
maybe they haven't been able to articulate why. Maybe they don't even realize that it's because of the content that's in front of them right now. Well, for a healthy child, they need their secure attachment figure to walk through, which is their parent, not their teacher.
Right.
And the teacher has 30 kids.
Right.
Like the parents.
That's it. It's about parents.
That's right.
Being empowered.
Yes.
Yes.
To walk with their kids.
Yes.
Through the material.
Yes.
And they can talk to their kids about it. Hey, I noticed that you're studying the Holocaust right now, and you've been really irritated lately,
Mm-hmm.
or you've been really quiet lately.
Yeah.
This is really hard. This is a hard thing to learn about.
Yeah.
Do you think that this could be like hurting your heart a little bit, and maybe you want to talk about it?
Yep.
That's what parents need to be able to do.
Yes.
And one of the arguments I got about it was, well, not all parents are going to be logged in. Well, I taught in a very Title IV, is that what it's
Title
called?
I.
Title I school.
Yeah. That's lower
very
income,
area. And most parents don't have the ability to log in.
But they could.
That's equity. The E in DEI. That is equity. Like, so nobody can log in now because a few parents won't.
Right.
And I mean, even in the wealthy areas, a few parents aren't going to log in.
Right.
Like, not everyone's going to take advantage of this.
I'd say a lot of them won't. But moms like you and I are.
And everyone has a smartphone. Like, I don't know who doesn't have a smartphone these days.
Yeah.
And or have access or can go to the library. If
Right.
you really want to log in and look at your kids' work, you can.
Yeah.
And
well, you also get, it's important, you get the printout in the back.
that's right. So even if you don't log in, you get the printout.
Yes.
So
my
everyone
kid's
gets
school
to-
isn't participating specifically in this. It is a classical public charter school. But I get these printouts right now when they are covering topics. So, for example, I guess Diwali was happening at some point recently in the past, and I get a printout that explains how they are going to talk about it as a holiday that is celebrated by Hindus. And my daughter and I had a conversation about it, and she asked me, what they believe. And I said it, and she said, but we're Christians and we believe in one God. Yes, we do. And yes, that's correct. And that was it. And it was fine. We can and it's
we can
very
important.
respect their religion and their practices.
Yes.
That was
very important.
Yes.
And I wanted to mention really quickly, I take exception to the idea that low-income families just aren't going to log in, so we shouldn't provide it.
Right.
Like, there are a lot of families in low-income areas
very elitist.
That are very involved in their children's education.
Yes.
And it's just unacceptable to give that stereotype.
It's a very elitist mentality that people have and we see this, we talk all the time in the parent empowerment movement about the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yes.
Look, there is an SPOE member that their concerns with this or that it is too hard.
Like, too hard for the student or for the teacher?
It's too hard for the students. They can't do it.
Well, okay.
There are teachers that will say, and we can see this, it's just too hard, so we're not going to teach it. Not just with this material, but I'm talking in general. And it very much is an elitist mentality as opposed to all of these kids can do this.
Right. Well, not only that,
give them the right environment.
The point of classical education is to meet kids at their developmental level.
Yes.
And so, yes, they can do it.
Yes, they can.
And if a child isn't ready for it, then they can wait until they get to go. They can hang out in the grammar section, and that's going to be part of identifying kids, right? We already do that. We're still going to do that. We're still going to identify kids. We're not removing IDEA.
Right.
Or the, what is it?
IDEA.
IDEA, which is for identifying children with disabilities.
Yeah.
That's still going to happen.
Yep.
And some kids may need to stay in the grammar phase for a while.
Yes.
And that's why classical education, because right now, I mean, it's so funny that was the argument, because right now we hand a first grader a piece of paper. This is what's happening in the public school. And I remember from my child's experience, and handed a piece of paper and a pencil and told, you need to write about this.
Mm-hmm.
A first grader is not ready to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yes.
and they're frustrated.
Right.
And they don't like writing, and they hate writing, and they say things about themselves because of their difficulty with this. That is why classical education is so great.
Yes.
Is because it doesn't expect the child to do something before they're developmentally ready
Yes.
for it.
And it doesn't create, this is another thing I'll add on this, it doesn't create a workaround when kids are not developmentally ready by handing them technology.
Yes, that's right. It's
This
not. This is not technology.
So we're gonna get into not just this, but just in general in a classical education. Yeah. That's the reason, one of the many reasons why I chose my child's school is I hear horror stories from families with, and I'm not talking about even middle school and high school, which yes, they should have access to technology. No, they shouldn't be only learning on technology. But where we're handing kids iPads or laptops or Chromebooks or whatever that taxpayers are paying for,
Mm-hmm.
that the tech lobby was up here walking the capitals to get it. But then knowing that kids can't do it, they've created these little things called clever badges. And it sounds so clever. And it drives me crazy when I found out about, which is a badge that a kid holds up in front of the camera to let them in, because kids are not able to actually type in a password into their iPads. I just had to throw that out there because it is such a boondoggle with the technology. And classical doesn't do that. But I digress. Okay, then let's ask about this myth that is a good segue. Myth that kids are required to be on technological devices for at least 4 hours a day.
So to debunk that, all you have to do is go to the TEA website.
Mm-hmm.
Is that this website?
I will
think
post
it's TEA.
it.
Okay,
Yes,
post
TEA.
the website. And look at
Mm-hmm.
look at it, because the curriculum is clearly not for use
Correct.
on technology.
Right.
It's clearly, I mean,
To be
some of
printed out.
it you cut it out,
Right.
cut out here, paste over here
Mhm.
with
Glue.
glue sticks. Like, that is not technology
Yeah.
based.
Yeah. So, and from what because that was one that I have a whole team here of education policy experts, and I kept getting this. I kept getting it from elected officials, by the way. And I was like, it's not in there. I know it's not there. And I called one of my senior policy experts, and I was like, go find me where somebody, like, what? I've read it. What is going on? It's not there. And so they did and they said, wait a second, hold on. The only way that you could even remotely draw is that there's a requirement of 4 hours of instructional time. Instructional time. That's it. That was the only correlation between the number of minutes a day. And somebody has got it in their mind that this means they have to be 4 hours on devices. But is that true?
No. So my understanding is that there might be some language where the teacher should have access so that she can print things out if she needs to. But
Sure.
the kids are not on devices.
Right.
They have their books that are
Right.
provided.
Yes.
And that's what they're working on. And it's 4 hours, my understanding is that's the estimate that it will take for the students
To get through the curriculum.
Right. every day,
Yes.
all the way through 12th grade.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Amen. All right. Let's go to the next myth. Teachers hate this curriculum because it's too difficult to teach.
Okay. That one was fun because I listened to the podcast called Sold a Story,
Mm-hmm.
which was fascinating to me. And it was about 3Qing and the phonics curriculum and how that all, there was an attempt to bring phonics back, and a bill passed. I think it was the No Child Left Behind bill that may have been part of it. And then the teachers just were like, we're not going to do it. And they didn't. Like, they figured out a way around it. And I mean, whether you like that bill or not, phonics was a positive piece of that. And
yes, teaching phonics for reading right.
If
that
it was
not.
That bill, I need to look. But I think that was it. And there were various times phonics has been attempted to be what was it?
House Bill 3. So it has been passed here in Texas.
And maybe it's taught,
50
but
years worth of data. No, it's not.
There's still work. Okay.
30 to 40 we estimate, and we can't because, again, 1,200 districts,
Yep.
multiple schools. So we're trying to pull and get an estimate. But no.
And even
30 to 40%
if they
of
are
classrooms
teaching
aren't.
phonics, if they're including 3 cueing, it's handicapping the
Yes.
children. And
Yes.
they're having a hard time taking
Right.
apart the words because they're thinking, oh, well, I need to look at the picture. Oh, I
Right.
need to look at the
Right.
No,
They're
you need to take the word apart.
Correct.
Yeah. And teachers and it's not the teachers, it's the unions. And the
Say it
union-
again.
It's not the teachers.
Yep.
It's the unions.
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe that there is I wonder how much of it is a money trail, right? Between the unions.
Oh, a
and
lot.
Right.
It's
and
a lot of money trail.
Curriculum writers, right?
Yes.
And they're all in cahoots. And there are plenty of teachers that would love to teach phonics.
Yes.
But they're not allowed to just do whatever they want in the
Right.
classroom.
Right.
And the unions have fought back against it.
Mhm.
And I believe that that's probably what happened here, is that the unions were like, no, we don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the
'Cause
rhetoric. And when
conservatives
I
seeking
heard
a
that
cla-
rhetoric, my red flags were all waving in the air. I'm like, is anybody else hearing this?
Right.
Like,
Right. Right.
because what is hard? Phonics is easy to teach. Like I have taught
Very
phonics.
easy.
Yes, it's very.
A.
Yes, exactly. And even if you have a child, I mean, there are going to be parents that disagree with me because they have a child with dyslexia, right?
Okay, that's different.
And that's different.
It is. And there is a model for teaching children with dyslexia.
Ortho Gillingham.
Yes, Ortho
Yes.
Gillingham.
And that is not the program that is in this Ortho Gillingham. But that's, again, that's why we have to identify kids
Yes.
who have dyslexia,
Yes.
who will then get Ortho Gillingham.
Yes.
But not all kids with, my understanding is not even all kids with dyslexia. Okay, a story. My brother, when we moved to Houston, I had already learned how to read through phonics. My brother was in 2nd grade. He might have been in 3rd grade. I think he was in 2nd grade, the end of 2nd grade. Still not reading at all, not reading. Bringing home lists of words, right? The 3 cueing, I'm sure it was in there somewhere. And my mom was
sight
like,
words. I mean, that's
yeah,
part
sight
of
words.
the...
My mom was like, I'm done.
Uh-huh.
And so she hires another mom, not even a reading specialist,
Right.
another mom who
Yep.
needed a job,
Yep.
buys a homeschool phonics curriculum that is very similar to this one. Like
Yes.
I looked at this curriculum and I was like, oh, this looks like the one that we did with my brother.
Yeah.
And she said, okay, Michele, you're going to do it with him because why not? Let's fill in some gaps if they
Mhm.
needed to be, right?
Mhm.
And for 3 months, we learned phonics.
Yes.
And at the end of 3 months, he read at a 6th grade level.
You nailed it. I think that's so.
With a mom. She was
It's
not
not-
a reading specialist.
Right. It's
This
mo-
is
moms
not
can
rocket
just- I had
science.
moms that, so I decided. Spalding Phonics is what my children's school uses, and I love it. It's great because it breaks it down. And my oldest daughter, is in 2nd grade, reads.
Mm-hmm.
But before my now kindergartner went to school, I thought, okay, can I really? How hard is teaching phonics? And I bought this book on it's a #1 bestseller on Amazon. I'll tell everybody, it's called 100 Days
Yes.
to Read. You said 3 months. The 4-year-old was reading after a month and a half.
Yep.
That is not a shot at teachers at all.
Mm-mm.
It is saying give teachers what they need to teach children how to read because, and this is why it's so important. So when you break down what the parent empowerment movement is about empowering parents who know and love their children best, it's about ensuring that the prosperity and the freedoms that we enjoy today, that they will understand how we got here and protect and have them in the future. And if we're not willing to recognize that there are entities, particularly those with financial interests, to keep things as is, and we don't change to phonics, and we don't say, teachers, here are the resources, like the open education resources, and you can do it. Every child can do it. I don't care what their background is, what their income is. I don't care what their native language is or spoken in their home. I don't care what it is. They can learn this.
Yeah.
And they have to learn it if they want to succeed in life, because we know that if a child cannot read by the 3rd grade, there's a 97% guarantee they will never catch up.
And that's because of the classroom, in
and
my
that's
opinion.
because-
That's because of the setup of the classroom.
Yeah.
Because in homeschool communities, they sometimes don't read until they're older.
Yes.
Right? Because of whatever reason, severe dyslexia, whatever. And they catch up.
Right.
But it's because their mom has the time to read aloud and do a lot of it.
And do a lot of phonics.
And do a
because
lot of
homeschoolers
phonics, right?
use phonics.
Yeah,
they
do. Totally.
they do. Homeschooling families use phonics.
But that's how children learn vocabulary, is through read aloud.
Yes.
Not reading. Like, that's one of the things I don't believe that. I think it's a total myth.
Yeah.
It may be a total myth.
Yes.
I'm not like an expert in this, but that children reading to themselves is the best way to develop vocabulary. Probably not.
Right.
Because they're skipping the words they don't know.
Correct. There's been tons of studies done that show, and the fact it's called the word gap. When you talk about, if you read one book or to 3 books a day for every child by the time they enter kindergarten, they have 5 million more words in their brain that they've heard.
Wow.
Than children who are not read to. And so, yes,
it's huge.
It's huge. It's huge.
And that's what's so great about this curriculum is that there is read aloud incorporated.
Yes.
So the teacher is reading aloud to the kids.
Yes.
From original source material.
Original source material. That's right. And when we talk about OER, I mean, there's so many great stories, literature, historical documents that are
just available.
They're available. They're free. They're free, and we need to use them. Okay, so let's go into one of the most contentious parts of this, which is baffling to me as someone who loves history and understands kind of the foundation of our country, which was to be free from religious tyranny, right? That's why they did not want to be ruled by a king that was subject to the King of England, the Church of England. But all right, let's go. Yeah. So we saw a whole lot of so-called clergy and others that said that students will be taught Bible study.
No.
Okay. What's the fact?
Yeah. So my understanding is that so to understand our history, right? Because the founding fathers, not all of them were believers, but they read their Bible.
The vast majority.
The majority were.
Yes.
And they read the Bible. The Bible was a big part of, that was probably the book that everyone had, right? Like not everyone had a book.
Correct.
And a lot of them had the Bible.
Yes.
Right? Books were expensive back then.
Yes.
And that was the book. That was the book that people were getting their values from. And that is why we have the government that we have today. Mm-hmm. So, and that was what they fought for, right? Was freedom to practice their religion. Mm-hmm. That's why the Pilgrims came here. And so, just what is it called that the Pilgrims that they put together? What was it called again? Anyway, just to study those early documents, you have to talk about the Bible because that's why they came to these decisions that they came to.
That's correct.
And that's all. Like, it's not Bible study. It's not, this is what we believe. We need to believe in Jesus. Everybody needs to believe in Jesus. Let's sing Jesus, I Loves You. That's not in there. It's just about history. Like, we can't remove the Bible from history. We cannot do it.
Right, because it's the foundation of Western civilization.
That's right.
The Judeo-Christian values with Greek philosophy is the basis. And it's also important to point out, you can't study the founding documents of our founding fathers. The Declaration of Independence references our Creator and God at least 3 times.
Yep.
And
so why would we not talk about where that came from?
Correct. Yes, you have to.
It doesn't make sense to not.
You can't, you learn, every child should learn the Declaration of Independence, or at least the start of it, which is that we hold these to be self-evident, these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by a creator. Capital C.
Right.
Capital.
Right.
Okay. I think that's so important to say. You have to be able, and we talked about the Sermon on the Mount earlier, that are Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King,
yes.
Who led the civil rights movement. spoke
And a lot of
time.
people who marched with him were pastors.
Yes.
Like, that's who he asked for help from.
Yes. Because if you believe in one God and we were all created by God, yes, then and that is what you have to understand, of course. So I think that is so important to say that historically, to understand Western civilization, to understand the foundation of America, to understand how we became the greatest, freest, most benevolent country that's ever existed, willing to sacrifice our time, treasure, and lives to fight against tyranny, that is why. And it is because of that individual freedoms that we believe came from our
God.
Creator.
Yeah,
our
that's
God.
right. Our Creator.
Okay, so the final red flag that we're going to talk about is the Marxist teachers' unions do not like this new curriculum at all.
I mean, I think it's
great
given at this point that the teachers' unions tend to lean pretty Marxist, and that long march to the institution has been like that is part of the education at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, and so it makes the curriculum great. I would think like that. That's my like. Why are we siding with the teachers' unions on this? Like, no, let's not do that.
Right.
Like, if the teachers' unions are against this, then I'm going to look at it a little bit more closely.
Right. That's right. Amen. I say this all the time. Like, if we got to pick a side, I'm going to stand on the side of freedom and opportunity because this is financially free and it is free to use if you want to. You opt in. You don't have to. Mm-hmm. Or you can stand on the other side that says you must do this. It has to be done our way. You can't do it any other way. We are right. You are evil. You are phobe. You are this if you don't do it that way. I mean, that really is what this comes down to.
Yeah.
Is freedom and tyranny.
Yes, because this side is free.
Because this side is free.
You have the option to use it if you want to. And one thing that when I was talking earlier about that is open and go, is that I hadn't realized is that the teachers have to take this curriculum that was written for a national audience, mm-hmm. And they have to work it into the TEKS, the Texas Education, as Texas Essentials and Knowledge Skills, mm-hmm. Yes. And so those are the requirements, right, that the kids learn.
Yes.
So they have a lot of work to do to pull things. And they have their lesson plans. Like, I never, as a homeschooler, I'm like, lesson plans. Like, oh, that's a thing. And there are homeschoolers that do that. Like, they're really into their lesson plans. But a lot of us don't have to do that because our curriculums are open and go. We open it. We know how many. It's already set out for us. This is how many lessons you need to do in a week to finish it by May, if that's what you want, right? And I just work through the lessons. Mm-hmm. And that is not possible for teachers because they have to be looking at the textbook. They have to pull things. They're constantly pulling things to make sure that they make it to the TEKS. They make it to that required learning. And this will eliminate that because it's already put to the TEKS. So it's literally open and go. They can open it up and teach the students. Have the material printed. The students can open up their textbook, which is consumable, by the way, because that is what is normal for K through 4.
What does that mean?
That means that it's typically a paperback book, mm-hmm. right? A paperback textbook mm-hmm. that's the perforated pages. They can tear it out and do worksheets. And so the entire book is consumable. You don't expect a kindergartner to get their textbook and put their paper, their, what is it called? Their grocery bag over it and have their extra book over here and be able to transfer answers, right? Write out, you remember the question, write in a complete sentence and restate the question.
Yes.
Kindergartners do not do that.
Right.
They fill in they're actually making their letters still, right? But like second and third graders, they're filling in the blank. They're maybe writing their answers, but they're doing it on the worksheet.
Yes.
They're not doing it on a separate piece of paper yet. That's not something we're expecting them to do.
Right.
So saying this is going to be so expensive because why aren't we using textbooks? That will come, mm-hmm. right? Middle school, high school, that's going to come. I'm sure. I imagine that's what's going to come.
Yes.
But for K through 4, that is not normal. That is not something, I don't think we've ever done that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that my daughter came home with a set of books that were consumable at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And when I was in K through 4, I came home with a set of books.
So this is great for teachers.
Yes.
This
I mean,
will
I
make,
would think.
Yeah, well,
That's
you're
what
a
I would
teacher.
want.
Yeah, I mean, you're a teacher. You're teaching
That's
4
what
kids.
I want. That's what I want.
Right.
I want open and go. I do not want to have to pull.
I think that's important because people don't realize this. I hear all the time from teachers that, yes, they deserve a pay raise, that the legislature intentionally worked with the unions and the lobbyists to deny. But we will continue to fight for teachers to get more money in the classrooms, less money to profiteers. But that's really not even the top concern that most teachers have. It's ensuring that they can control their classroom, right? Discipline, and that the administrators back them up.
Huge.
Removing children that are violent and disciplinary problems that disrupt the school day, and their frustration with not being able to open up curriculum and start teaching.
They have to spend so much time.
There's whole websites,
away
right?
from their
Teachers pay
families.
teachers, right?
Yeah.
There's teachers pay teachers. There's
Yes,
all these
yes,
different websites,
yes.
Google, Pinterest, where teachers are going. And really, that's where a lot of this leftist, even I think sometimes teachers don't even realize necessarily. A lot of them do, but some of them don't realize, when they're printing something off, that all the questions, or that some of them are kind of guiding students down a path to a very progressive belief system, or to inadvertently, say, you don't have to tell your parents this, or things like that. I've seen these questions. But this is an open and go.
Yeah.
And it is high quality.
High quality.
It is, you can teach this
phonics
this year. You can teach it next year.
Yep.
You do not have to go search for stuff all the time. You get more time with your family. You don't have to be working off the clock. All of this is better for Texas. But you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it.
If the school district gets to decide.
Yep.
And they can say no.
Okay.
And they're more than welcome to do that.
That's right. But the ones that have done it seem to be pretty proud of it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I hope that more will
follow
and jump on board.
Yeah.
And they can still, as long as it's approved, they can still pull things if they want to. If they prefer something, they can still pull that.
Yeah. If there's a great activity that they've learned. Yeah, absolutely. So before we wrap up, I want you to look in this camera right here, and I want you to talk to the moms and dads of Texas, maybe who have seen some of the conspiratorial theories, maybe who are struggling to figure out if they want to homeschool, maybe who really want their district to give this awesome, high quality materials a try so their kid can read on grade level, so they understand history, so they're free from indoctrination. Talk to those parents there and tell them why they need to get involved in the parent empowerment movement, and they need to be encouraging their leaders to support adopting the high quality instructional materials for their families.
I do. I hope that you will consider contacting your state representative and your state senator and asking them, or I'm sorry, your representative, the state board of education. That's where it's in front of right now. The bill is passed.
Yep.
But the state board of education needs to hear from you about this. You can take a look at it yourself. On my Substack, I've linked it. The curriculum, the high quality education materials. You can take a look for yourself and see for yourself. Take a look at the phonics. I mean, the phonics was so great. I could have printed it out and worked with my daughter myself over the summer. I would have loved that opportunity. And I think that parents are going to want that opportunity to be able to work with their kids on things that if they see that their kids are struggling, they're going to be able to work with their kids on that because they will have access to all of the materials. You can know exactly what your kid is studying. It's going to be great all around. Homeschoolers can use it. I mean, obviously I'm a homeschooler, and I think that the best thing for you to do is pull your kid out of public school. I'm just going to be honest. That's probably the best thing for you to do if you're capable and able to do that. and you're not working outside the home, you can anybody can homeschool. That's my belief. But not everyone's going to do that. Not everybody can do that. And I would contact my school board, and I would ask them to look into this curriculum and adopt it, so that you can be involved with your kids' education. Because that's really what the bottom line is here, is that this curriculum gives the parents the seat at the table, so that they can see what their child is learning, and that they can be involved with their child's day-to-day education. And that is good. That is a good thing for the parents to be involved, and we should be encouraging that. And so that is why I hope that you will send an email to the State Board of Education and ask them to adopt this curriculum. Thank you.
Michele, thank you for being here. Thank you for your incredible work on this.
Thank you.
No one paid
Thank you
to
for
do
having
this.
me.
You just decided to
Yeah,
write
I
it up
make
yourself.
nothing.
Right. But I'm going to provide it to anybody that wants to understand why this is so important to individual kids and really to the state as a whole. Thank you all for joining us today on Parent Empowerment with Mandy Drogin. And now you have the power.